The elevator dinged on the 7th floor, and Nolan Crest stepped out like a man who had forgotten how to breathe. The hallway smelled like bleach and warm plastic. Somewhere behind a closed door, a monitor beeped in a steady rhythm, like a clock that did not care who was hurting. He walked fast, eyes on the numbers, mind on one thing only: a quiet room. A place to sit, a place to feel something, anything, after 2 days of feeling nothing at all. He found a door with a half-covered number. The tape curled at the corner. In the low light, it looked like 714. Nolan pushed it open. A scream hit him like a wave. A woman lay on the bed, drenched in sweat, shaking, her dark hair stuck to her cheeks. Her face was twisted with pain and fear, and there was no one beside her. No hand to hold. No voice to calm her. Just her breathing and the raw sound of her suffering. Nolan's hand stayed on the handle. His suit, sharp, expensive, made for boardrooms, looked ridiculous in this room. He should leave. He should close the door. He should find a nurse. This was not his life. This was not his life. Not his problem. He had stepped into the wrong room. Then the woman's eyes found his. They were wide and wet, almost black in the harsh light. They did not look angry. They looked terrified. "Please," she gasped, voice breaking. "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me alone." Nolan's chest tightened. It felt like someone had reached inside him and grabbed something he had kept locked away for years. I'm sorry," he stammered. "Wrong room. Another contraction slammed through her. She arched off the bed, a cry ripping out of her throat. When it eased, she fell back, panting like she had been running for miles. "Help me," she whispered. Just stay, please." Nolan's feet would not move. "Where's your family?" he heard himself ask. "Your husband? The father?" She let out a broken laugh that turned into a sob. "Gone. All gone. It's just me." The door swung open, and a nurse rushed in, brisk and focused. She checked the monitor, adjusted the IV, then glanced at Nolan and gave a quick, relieved nod like he belonged there. "Good," she said. "You made it. She's moving fast. Twins don't wait for anybody." Nolan's mouth went dry. "I'm not." The nurse was already snapping gloves on. "Contractions are close, 2 minutes apart. You might want to gown up, Dad." "I'm not." Nolan tried again, but the woman's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her nails dug into his skin. He felt it, sharp and real. She was clinging to him like he was the only thing in the room that was not slipping away. "Breathe, honey," the nurse coached. "In through your nose, out through your mouth, just like we practiced." "I can't," the woman choked out. "It hurts. Oh, God, it hurts so much." The contraction eased. Her grip loosened. Red marks stayed on Nolan's wrist like proof this was happening. She looked up at him, mascara smeared, cheeks flushed, eyes shining with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You can go. You should go. This isn't your problem." Nolan stared at her, a stranger, a woman at the edge of something huge, alone. Something inside him shifted, small at first, like a crack in ice. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She swallowed. "Mara." "Mara what?" "Mara Bell." "I'm Nolan," he said, voice low. "Nolan Crest." Her eyes flicked over him, the suit, the watch, the clean hair, the kind of man who never belongs in a room like this. Nolan pulled the visitor chair closer to her bed and sat down. His heart beat hard, heavy, loud in his ears. "And I'm not going anywhere," he said. Mara stared at him like she didn't trust what she had heard, like hope was dangerous. "You don't have to," she whispered. "I know," Nolan said, "but I'm here now." Another contraction built. Nolan saw it coming in her face first, the way her mouth opened as if to scream before the pain even hit. Her body tensed. Her fingers reached for him again without asking. Nolan took her hand. "Squeeze," he said, "as hard as you need to." She did. Her grip crushed his, desperate and fierce. He did not pull away. The nurse returned with a doctor. a tall woman with calm eyes. She examined Mara quickly, her hands practiced, her voice steady. 7 centimeters, the doctor said. You're progressing fast, Mara. You're doing great, but we need to talk about the twins' positions. Mara's face went pale. What's wrong? Are they okay? Baby A is head down. Perfect, the doctor said. Baby B is breech. That means bottom first. Sometimes we can still deliver safely, but with twins and how quickly you're moving, we have to be ready for a C-section if it becomes risky. No, Mara whispered. Her voice trembled. No, I can't. The doctor's expression softened. We'll see how baby A goes, but I need you prepared for all options. When the doctor left, Mara's eyes filled and spilled over. This crying was different. Not pain, not fear of pushing. It was the helpless kind. The kind that comes when someone is already drowning and the water rises anyway. I don't have insurance, she said, voice small. I don't have anyone. She swallowed hard. I don't even have a place ready. I was still saving for a crib. Nolan's throat tightened. He should not be here. He was a man who ran a company. A man whose name was on magazines. A man who could sign papers and move markets and close deals without blinking. But he could not look away from her tears. What were their names? Nolan asked, trying to keep her anchored. Do you have names? Mara's lips shook into the smallest smile. Girls, she breathed. 2 girls. That's amazing, Nolan said. I pick names, she whispered. I picked them when I was scared so I'd remember why I was doing this. What are they? Lily, she said, voice breaking with love. And Nora. Nolan nodded, as if the names mattered so much they could hold the room together. Maybe they could. Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Mara cried out, body lifting off the bed, her fingers locked around his. It's different, she gasped when it eased, eyes wide. I can feel it. I can feel her coming. Nolan jumped up and pressed the call button, his hand shaking. Within seconds, the room flooded with people. Lights brightened. Equipment rolled in. The air changed, charged and busy. The doctor checked Mara again and nodded once, sharp and clear. 10 centimeters, she announced. Mara, on the next contraction, I need you to push. Baby A is ready. Mara's eyes snapped to Nolan. In the storm of the room, she found him like a lighthouse. I'm scared, she whispered, voice thin. Please stay. Nolan leaned close, so only she could hear him. I'm staying, he said. I promise. The contraction built. The doctor's voice cut through the noise. Push, Mara. Big push. You can do this. Mara screamed and pushed with everything she had, tears rolling into her hair. Nolan held her hand as if his grip could keep her from breaking apart. I can't, Mara sobbed. I can't do it. Yes, you can, Nolan said, surprised by the fire in his own voice. You're doing it. You're not alone. One more. Just one more. Mara shook her head, face wet, breath ragged. Then the contraction hit again, and she bore down with a sound that felt like her whole life ripping open. Good, the doctor said. I see the head. One more push. Mara looked at Nolan, and in her eyes was the wildest question of all. What if she failed? Nolan squeezed her hand harder. Do it, he whispered. For Lily, for Nora, for you. Mara pushed again, and in the next breath, the room filled with a new sound. A small, fierce cry. Nolan's heart lurched as if it had been asleep for years and someone had finally shaken it awake. The doctor lifted a tiny baby girl into the air, wriggling, angry, alive. Baby A, she said with a smile. She's here. Mara began to cry and laugh at the same time, trembling all over. Is she okay? She sobbed. Is she breathing? She's perfect, a nurse said, moving fast, cleaning the baby, checking her. Then they placed the baby on Mara's chest for a brief moment, skin to skin. Mara looked down, eyes shining with a love so pure it nearly hurt to witness. Nolan stared at them, breath caught. He felt something crack wider in his chest. This mattered. This was real. But the doctor's voice turned serious again. Okay, she said. Now we need to check baby B. The ultrasound rolled in. The screen glowed. The doctor's face tightened as she studied it. Mara's hand found Nolan's again, shaking. "Tell me," she whispered, terrified. "Please." The doctor swallowed. "She's still breech, and she's smaller than her sister. Mara, I think the safest choice is a C-section." Mara's eyes went huge. "How much?" she blurted, voice breaking. "How much does that cost?" The room went still. The doctor hesitated, then said gently, "Without insurance, 30 to 40,000. Mara's face collapsed. "I can't," she whispered. "I make barely enough to eat. I can't do that." Nolan looked at her. This woman, still shaking from birth, still bleeding and sweating and fighting, was calculating debt while her baby waited inside her. He thought of his own world. Numbers, accounts, deals, millions that moved with a signature. He felt something in him settle, like a decision locking into place. "Do it," Nolan said, voice quiet but firm. Everyone turned. "Do the C-section," he repeated. "I'll pay, whatever it costs. Just do what's safest for her baby." Mara stared at him, shocked, tears falling again. "You can't," she choked. "You don't even know me." Nolan met her eyes. He saw fear. He saw pride. He saw a mother ready to break herself in half for her child. "I know enough," he said, "and I'm not letting you face this choice alone." They began to move fast, prepping her for surgery, switching blankets, wheeling her bed toward the operating room. A nurse stopped Nolan at the door. "Family, only beyond this point." Nolan's stomach dropped. Mara looked back at him, panic rising in her eyes like a tide. In that second, Nolan heard his own voice before he even thought about it. "I'm her fiancé," he said. The lie landed like a stone, heavy, certain, final. The nurse's face softened. "Then gown up, quickly." As Mara was wheeled away, her hand reached out until her fingers slipped from his. And Nolan, still in his expensive suit, stood in the hallway with red scratches on his wrist, realizing he had just stepped into a life he could not walk back from. The operating room was colder than Nolan expected. The air smelled sharp, like metal and clean cloth. Bright lights glared down from the ceiling. A blue curtain rose between Mara's face and the place where the doctors worked, hiding everything below her ribs. Nolan sat by her head in scrubs that didn't fit him right. A mask covered his mouth, but it could not hide how fast he was breathing. His hands felt too big, too clumsy for a room where every move mattered. Mara's fingers searched for him without looking. When she found his hand, she clung to it like it was the last solid thing in the world. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "I know," Nolan whispered back. "But you're safe. They're taking care of you. I'm right here." Her eyes squeezed shut as strange pressure moved through her body. She flinched, then tried to steady her breathing the way the nurse told her. "Nolan," she said, voice shaking, "when this is over, when they send the bill, I'll pay you back. Every cent. I don't know how. It might take years, but I will." He squeezed her hand once, slow and steady. "We'll talk later," he said. "Right now, just meet your daughter." Minutes stretched like hours. The doctor spoke in calm, clipped phrases. Tools clinked. Someone called out numbers. Nolan kept his eyes on Mara's face, watching her fight panic and stay present. Then, a thin cry rose up. Small, but strong. The doctor smiled. "Baby B is out. 5 pounds, 2 ounces. Breathing well." Mara's entire face broke open. Tears poured down into her hairline. "Can I see her?" "Please." A nurse stepped around the curtain holding a tiny bundle wrapped tight in a pink cap. The baby's mouth opened and closed, like she was still learning what air was. Mara's hands shook as they placed the baby near her cheek. She kissed the soft cap and sobbed. "Nora," she whispered. "Hi, sweet girl, hi." Another nurse brought Lily close too, letting Mara see both faces at once. 2 tiny lives, 2 perfect cheeks, 2 little fists that flexed like they were already fighting for space in the world. Nolan felt his throat burn. He pressed his lips together under the mask, trying to stay composed. It didn't work. Tears slid down his face anyway, hot and silent. Mara noticed. Her eyes lifted to him, stunned. "Are you crying?" Nolan let out a shaky breath. "I didn't mean to," he said. "It just happened." Mara's gaze softened, like she had just seen the real man under the suit and the money and the name. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying, for not leaving me." Nolan held her hand tighter. "Thank you for letting me." They moved her to recovery, where the lights dimmed and the noise fell away. The room there felt warmer, quieter. Like the world had finally taken a step back and given them space to breathe. Mara lay propped up, pale and exhausted, with Lily sleeping on one side and Nora sleeping on the other. Their tiny chests rose and fell in slow, steady waves. Nolan sat beside her in a chair that squeaked every time he shifted. He should have left. He knew that. He had meetings tomorrow. People were waiting on him. A whole company moved with his decisions. But his phone could have been on fire, and he still couldn't have walked out of that room. Mara turned her head slightly, studying him. "Why are you still here?" she asked softly. "Be honest." Nolan stared at his hands for a moment. The red marks on his wrist were already fading, but he could still feel the memory of her grip. "My dad died 2 days ago," he said. Mara's eyes widened. "Oh, heart attack," Nolan continued, voice flat, like he was reading numbers. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. "I'm so sorry," Mara whispered, and it wasn't polite sympathy. It was real. It hit Nolan harder than he expected. Nolan nodded once. "I came here because I couldn't feel anything. I thought maybe a chapel could help. I thought quiet could help." Mara's lips parted, and she looked at him like she finally understood the emptiness behind his calm face. "And instead you found," she glanced down at the babies, "this." "Yeah," Nolan said, "this." They fell into silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward. The kind that felt like rest. After a while, Mara spoke again, voice small. "I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no." Nolan looked at her. "Okay." Quote, "When you said you'd pay," her throat tightened, "you meant it?" Quote, "Yes," Nolan said without hesitation. Mara's eyes filled. "I'm not a charity case." "I know," Nolan said. "I work," she said, like she needed him to understand. "I work hard. I didn't end up alone because I'm lazy or careless. I ended up alone because I trusted the wrong person." Nolan watched her swallow pain like it was something she had done 1,000 times. "Their father," she continued, staring at the wall, "said he wanted a family. Then I got pregnant. Then I found out it was twins. And one day, he just didn't come home." Nolan's jaw tightened. "You never heard from him again?" Mara gave a tiny shake of her head. "Not once. No call. No message. Nothing." Nolan leaned forward slightly. "Where's your family?" Mara's eyes dropped. "My parents died when I was a kid. I bounced around in foster homes. I aged out. I made it work." She let out a breath that sounded like it hurt. "It's always been just me." Nolan looked at her, and he felt something strange. Not pity, something heavier. Respect. "You shouldn't have had to do this alone," he said. Mara's eyes glistened. "But I did." A nurse came in then, checking vitals, adjusting the blankets. She smiled at Nolan, like he was part of the picture. "You're doing great, Mom," she told Mara. Then she looked at Nolan. "Dad, you should get some sleep, too." Nolan opened his mouth to correct her. Mara beat him to it. He's with me," she said quietly. Nolan's gaze snapped to hers. Mara didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the babies, but her words hung in the air like a fragile bridge. The nurse nodded, pleased, and left. Nolan's heart thudded. "Mara," he said softly, "you don't have to." "I know," Mara whispered, "but if people think you're family, they stop questioning. They stop looking at me like I'm broken." Nolan swallowed. "You're not broken." Mara's laugh was small and tired. "Tell that to the world." That night, Nolan finally left the hospital near dawn. The sky outside was turning gray, the city waking up like nothing had happened. His phone was full of missed calls. His assistant had sent message after message. "Where are you?" Board is asking. "Meeting moved. Urgent. Nolan stared at the screen, then slid the phone into his pocket without answering. He went home to a penthouse that felt like a museum. Quiet, cold. Too perfect, too empty. He showered, but the smell of antiseptic stayed in his nose. He changed clothes, but he could still feel Mara's hand in his. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since his father died, he cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady tears that came from somewhere deep. He cried for the father who never knew how to love him without money. He cried for the years he spent chasing success like it could fill a hole in his chest. He cried for the woman in room 741 who had stared death in the face and still pushed life into the world. And when the sun finally rose, Nolan made a decision. He went back. He arrived at the hospital with coffee, warm pastries, and 3 heavy shopping bags that cut into his fingers. He had spent hours online, reading lists titled, What Newborn Twins Need, clicking buy without looking at prices. When he entered Mara's room, she was sitting up in bed, hair messy, face pale, trying to feed both babies at once. One baby cried, then the other. Mara's hands shook. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I can't do it, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I'm doing it wrong. Nolan set the bags down quietly and moved to her side. Hey, he said, voice gentle, you're not doing it wrong. You're learning. Mara looked up at him and broke fully, sobbing like she had been holding it in until she saw him. I'm supposed to know, she cried. I'm their mom. Why don't I know? Nolan pressed the call button. Let's get a nurse, he said. We'll figure it out. A nurse came in and adjusted Mara's position, guided the babies, calmed the room with steady hands. 40 minutes later, both girls were fed and sleeping, their faces soft and relaxed. Mara wiped her eyes, exhausted. Nolan pointed to the bags. I brought some things. Mara peeked inside and froze. Bottles, diapers, tiny clothes, blankets, pacifiers. Then she saw the box for a double stroller and pulled it out halfway. Her eyes went wide. Nolan, this is too much. It's just what you need, he said. Mara found the price tag he forgot to remove. Her mouth fell open. This stroller cost $3,000. Nolan blinked like that was normal. It had the best safety ratings. Mara let out a laugh that turned into a tear. You are unbelievable. Nolan's lips twitched. I've been called worse. Mara's expression softened again. She looked at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Why are you doing all this? She asked. Really? Nolan pulled the chair close and sat down. Because you're going to be discharged soon, he said. And you're healing from surgery. And you have twins. And you're alone. He swallowed. And I can help. Mara stared at him, torn between gratitude and fear. I'll manage, she whispered. Nolan nodded. I know you will, but that doesn't mean you should have to. Before Mara could answer, the door opened again. A woman stepped in with a clipboard and a kind but serious face. Hi, Mara, she said gently. I'm Ms. Alvarez, the hospital social worker. We need to talk about your discharge plan. Mara's body stiffened. Nolan watched her eyes flick to the sleeping babies, then back to the clipboard, like she already knew pain was coming. Ms. Alvarez lowered her voice. Do you have a safe place to go home to? Someone to help you with the babies? Mara's lips trembled. I'll figure it out. Ms. Alvarez glanced down at her papers. I spoke with your landlord. He said your lease was terminated for non-payment. Mara went white. Nolan felt the room tilt. Ms. Alvarez spoke carefully. Mara, where are you planning to go tomorrow when you're discharged? Mara's voice cracked. A motel. Just for a few days. Until I can. Nolan stood up so fast the chair scraped. No, he said. Both women looked at him. Nolan's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. She's not going to a motel, he said. Not with newborn twins. Mara's eyes widened. Panicked. Nolan, don't. But Nolan looked at her, and something in his face was different now. Not distant. Not numb. Present. You're coming with me, he said softly. You and the girls. Mara shook her head, tears rising again. I can't accept that. Nolan stepped closer, lowering his voice so it felt like a promise, not a command. Then, tell me what you're supposed to do, he said. Tell me how you're supposed to heal from surgery, carry 2 babies, and sleep in a motel room. Tell me how that's safe. Mara's mouth opened, but no words came. Ms. Alvarez cleared her throat gently. If Mr. Crest is offering stable housing, she said, that is a safer discharge plan, but I would recommend a written agreement for your protection. Nolan nodded instantly. Done, he said. Whatever she needs. Mara stared at him, shaking. Pride fought fear inside her, and Nolan could see it. Then Lily stirred, making a tiny sound, and Mara's face crumpled. Okay, she whispered, barely audible. Okay. I'll come. Nolan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Mara looked up at him, tears falling down her cheeks. This is crazy, she said. Nolan's voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I know, he said, but I think the crazy part would be letting you walk out of here with nowhere to go. Mara looked down at her daughters, then back at Nolan, as if she was stepping onto that fragile bridge again. And Nolan realized, with a sudden rush of fear and hope, that once she crossed it, neither of them would ever be the same. The next day, the hospital released Mara with a stack of papers and a careful warning about stairs, lifting, and rest. Rest felt like a joke. She had 2 newborn girls and a body that still felt split open. Nolan arrived with a car seat installer, a nurse he had hired for the night shift, and a driver who looked like he had done hard things without asking questions. Mara watched it all like she was floating outside her own life. This is too much, she whispered as Nolan gently lifted Nora's carrier into the car. People don't do this. Nolan shut the door with care. They should, he said, and I'm doing it. The ride to his place was quiet. Manhattan slid past the window in a blur of winter gray. Mara held Lily in her arms, smelling baby powder and milk, listening to the soft squeaks of newborn breathing. When the car stopped, she looked up. The building rose above them like something from a movie. Glass, stone, doormen in dark coats, polished floors that reflected the lights like water. Mara's stomach turned. I don't belong here, she said. Nolan didn't argue. He just opened his hand. Come inside, he said. Let's take it one step at a time. The penthouse was massive, but the first thing Mara noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. Like the place had never been lived in, only owned. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the river, the skyline, the cold sunlight on steel buildings. The furniture looked expensive and untouched. The air smelled faintly like fresh paint and lemon polish. Mara shifted Lily's blanket and swallowed hard. Nolan guided her down a hallway and opened a set of double doors. This side is yours, he said. Mara stared. 2 bedrooms. A nursery-sized room that could fit both cribs and a chair by the window. A bathroom with a tub deeper than any she had ever seen. A sitting area with a couch that faced the river like it was meant for healing. Mara's throat tightened. Nolan. It's space I wasn't using, he said. Now it has a purpose. She looked down at Lily and Nora, then up at him with wet eyes. I can't pay you back for this. I'm not asking you to, Nolan said. That first night, Mara barely slept. Every sound made her flinch. Every tiny cough from one of the girls shot fear through her. Her body hurt. Her mind raced. At 2 in the morning, she sat in the nursery chair, holding Lily against her chest, rocking slowly, tears falling without her permission. She didn't hear Nolan at first. Then a soft knock came at the open door. Mara turned and saw him standing there in sweatpants and a plain gray shirt, hair messy, face tired. He looked like a different man without the suit. I heard her, he said quietly. Do you need anything? Quote. Mara tried to speak, but her voice broke. I'm scared, she admitted. Nolan walked in slowly, like he didn't want to startle her. He crouched beside the chair and looked at Lily with an expression Mara had never seen on a man's face before. Wonder, care, awe. She's okay, he said softly. You're doing great. Mara let out a shaky laugh. I don't feel great. I know, he said, but you're still showing up. That's what makes you great. The night nurse arrived at 3, a calm older woman named Denise. She moved like someone who had held 100 babies and never panicked once. She helped Mara get comfortable, showed her how to lay the babies safely, and how to rest without guilt. When Mara finally fell asleep, Nolan stayed up on the couch in the sitting area, listening to the soft breathing from the nursery and feeling a strange warmth in his chest that made the penthouse feel less like a museum. The weeks that followed changed everything. Bottles warmed at odd hours, laundry ran non-stop. Tiny socks appeared in every corner. The clean lines of Nolan's life blurred under burp cloths, baby swings, and the quiet chaos of 2 newborns. Mara healed slowly. Some days she felt strong. Some days she cried in the shower so the babies wouldn't hear. Nolan, the man who used to live on coffee and control, started coming home early. He learned how to hold both girls at once. He learned how to rock Nora in a way that stopped her crying. He learned that Lily liked a warm hand on her belly. And without even meaning to, he learned how to be present. One evening, Mara sat at the kitchen island, pumping breast milk while Nora slept on her chest and Lily dozed in a swing nearby. Her eyes were tired, but her mouth lifted in a small smile. "You're getting good at this," she told Nolan. Nolan looked up from folding a tiny onesie like it was a business contract. "I'm terrified every time I do anything," he admitted. Mara smiled wider. "That's normal." They laughed softly, and it felt like something that belonged to a family. Then, 6 weeks after the birth, the world came knocking again. A woman arrived one afternoon with a neat coat and a folder. "Nolan's security," announced her, and Nolan came out of his home office with a polite, distant face that Mara recognized as the mask he wore with strangers. "Mr. Crest," the woman said, "I'm here about the hospital billing and insurance documentation. Also, there are some legal questions. The hospital has notes that you identified yourself as the patient's fiancé." Mara's stomach dropped. Nolan glanced at Mara, then at the sleeping babies. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Yes," he said, "I did." The woman's expression was careful. "Are you in fact engaged?" Mara's hands went cold. She looked at Nolan, panic rising. This was the moment where kindness turned into consequences. The moment where people started judging and digging and tearing. Nolan didn't look away. "I'm not going to let her be questioned like she did something wrong," he said. She was in labor, alone. "I said what I had to say so I could stay with her." The woman nodded slowly. "I understand, but the paperwork will need clarity." Mara's throat tightened. "I didn't ask him to lie," she blurted out. "I didn't plan any of this." "I'm not trying to." Nolan stepped closer to her, not touching, but near enough that she felt less exposed. "She doesn't have to defend herself," he said. The woman watched them, then lowered her voice. "You should consider formalizing an agreement, for her protection, for the children's stability. Otherwise, people may assume." Mara heard the rest without hearing it. Assume she was after money, assume she was using him, assume she was a mistake. The woman left, and the penthouse felt too quiet again. Mara took a breath, slow and shaky. "This is why I didn't want to come here," she said. "This is why I didn't want to accept help. People will think the worst." Nolan looked at her, eyes tired. "Let them," he said. Mara shook her head. "You don't understand. I have spent my whole life being looked at like I'm less, like I'm trouble, like I don't deserve good things." Nolan's face softened. He walked to the window and stared out at the river for a long moment. Then he spoke, voice low. "My father loved in a strange way," he said. "He thought providing money was the same as providing love. He was never home. When he was, he talked about work." Mara stayed quiet, watching him. "When he died," Nolan continued, "I felt nothing. I stood in my penthouse and stared at a wall and felt nothing. That scared me more than the death itself." He turned back toward her. "And then I walked into the wrong room," he said, "and you looked at me like you needed me, like I mattered." Mara swallowed hard. You mattered. Quote, Nolan took a slow breath. I don't want to go back to the man I was. Mara's eyes burned. Neither do I, she admitted. But I don't want to be saved, Nolan. I want to be respected. Nolan nodded once. Then let me respect you, he said. Let me love you in a way that doesn't make you smaller. Mara stared at him, heart pounding. Days passed, then weeks. The babies grew rounder. Their cries changed. Their eyes started tracking light. Mara learned their small differences, the way Lily curled her fingers when she slept, the way Nora kicked one foot like she was impatient with the world. Nolan learned how to laugh again, and one evening in early spring, when the air finally lost its winter bite, Mara and Nolan sat on the balcony with 2 baby monitors beside them. The city glittered below, not as harsh as before, almost beautiful. Mara stared at the lights for a long time. I should start looking for a place, she said softly. Nolan's jaw tightened. Do you want to leave? Mara shook her head slowly. No, but this isn't my world. This isn't real life. Quote. Nolan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What if it is? He asked. Mara turned toward him, confused. What do you mean? Nolan stared at his hands like he was about to sign something that could ruin him. Then he lifted his eyes to hers. Mara, he said, voice shaking just slightly. Marry me. Mara blinked. Nolan. I know how it sounds, he rushed on. I know it's fast. I know people will say you wanted my money, and I panicked after my dad died. I know all of that. He swallowed, eyes bright. But I don't care what they say, he continued. I care about what I feel when I'm with you. I care about what I feel when I hold Lily and Nora. I care about waking up and knowing there's someone in this home who needs me for something real. Mara's lips parted, but she couldn't speak. I love you, Nolan said. The words sounded like they cost him everything. I didn't know I could love like this. I didn't know my heart still worked. Mara's eyes flooded. Nolan, you don't have to do this out of guilt. This isn't guilt, Nolan said firmly. This is choice. This is the first true choice I've made in years. Mara's hands shook. Your world it's big, she whispered, and mine is small. People will tear me apart. Nolan reached for her hands and held them. His palms were warm. Then I'll stand in front of you, he said. Every time. Mara stared at him, tears slipping down her cheeks. You barely know me. Nolan gave a soft, sad smile. I know how you hold your babies when they cry. I know you apologize when you shouldn't. I know you pretend you're fine when you're exhausted. I know you love harder than anyone I've ever met. Mara's breath hitched. And I know, Nolan whispered, that I don't want a life without you in it. Mara closed her eyes for a second, like she was stepping off a cliff. Then she opened them and looked straight at him. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Nolan let out a breath that sounded like relief and fear and joy all at once. He pulled her into his arms carefully like she might break, and kissed her with the city lights shining below them. 3 weeks later, they stood in the penthouse living room under soft spring sunlight. It was a small ceremony. No crowds, no cameras, no business speeches. Just a few people who mattered. Denise came, smiling and crying at the same time. The hospital social worker, Ms. Alvarez, came too, wearing a simple dress and looking proud. Nolan's assistant came, quietly wiping her eyes. A judge stood near the window with papers in his hands. And Lily and Nora, 3 months old, wore tiny white dresses and slept through most of it like angels who didn't know what they had changed. Mara wore a cream-colored dress that made her look like warmth itself. Not rich, not flashy, just real. When it was time for vows, Nolan looked at her with a face that didn't belong to the old Nolan crest anymore. 3 months ago, he said, voice steady, I walked into the wrong room, and I found you. Mara's tears fell before he even finished. I thought I was successful, Nolan continued, but I was empty. You showed me that life is not boardrooms and numbers. It's this. It's love. It's showing up. It's staying. He swallowed hard. I promise to stay, he said, with you, with our girls, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Mara could barely speak, but she lifted her chin. "You didn't save me," she said, voice trembling. "You saw me. You stayed when no one else did. You gave my daughters a father who chooses them. And you gave me a love that feels like a home." She looked at Nolan like she still couldn't believe he was real. "I choose you," she whispered. "Every day." The judge pronounced them married. Nolan kissed Mara, and Lily made a tiny squeak like she was giving her opinion. Someone laughed through tears. Years passed. The penthouse no longer looked like a museum. It looked like a life. Finger-painted art on the walls, toys in corners, photos on every surface. Nolan stepped back from the daily grind of his company. He still worked, but not like before. He showed up to soccer games. He carried backpacks. He made pancakes badly and proudly. Mara finished her degree, then built something of her own. She started a foundation that helped mothers who had nowhere to go, mothers who were scared and alone in rooms with bright lights and no hands to hold. One Saturday morning, 5-year-old Lily and Nora sat on the living room rug arguing about which movie to watch. "Princess Wham!" Lily insisted. "No, the dog one!" Nora shot back. Mara leaned on the kitchen counter smiling, and Nolan sat down between the girls, pulling them both close. "Compromise," he said gently. "Lily picks today, Nora picks tomorrow." Nora frowned. "That's not fair." Nolan kissed the top of her head. "Family means we work it out together." The girls finally agreed, and as the movie started, Lily looked up at Nolan with big brown eyes. "Daddy," she said, "tell us the story again." Nolan glanced toward Mara. Mara met his eyes, smiling softly, like she still remembered every second. "The one about how you met Mommy," Nora added. Nolan pulled them closer. "Well," he began, voice warm, "I was having the worst day of my life. I was looking for a quiet room. And I made a mistake." Quote, "And you walked into the wrong room," Lily said, giggling. "Yes," Nolan said, "I walked into the wrong room." "And Mommy was there," Nora whispered. Mara came to sit beside them, and Nolan's chest filled with that steady, lasting warmth. "I stayed," Nolan said softly, "because leaving didn't feel right. Staying felt like where I was meant to be." Lily touched his cheek. "I'm glad you made the mistake, Daddy." Nolan's eyes stung. "Me too," he whispered. "Me too." And in the glow of a family that was built from one wrong door and one brave choice, Nolan Crest knew the truth. Some mistakes are not mistakes at all. They are the beginning. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.